Taylor Swift furious. Blake Lively shockingly leaks hidden wedding secrets. Drama unfolds. Grab your emergency oxygen masks and cancel your weekend plans, because the pop culture universe has just suffered a Category 5 tectonic shift, and the radioactive fallout is raining down straight onto the pristine lawns of the Hollywood elite. I am not talking about a standard, run-of-the-mill celebrity spat where two stars stop liking each other's highly filtered vacation photos on Instagram. No. I am talking about a scorched earth, absolute nuclear meltdown that has turned a decade-long, seemingly bulletproof sisterhood into a smoking crater of betrayal, legal warfare, and broken vows. Let me ask you a question that will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. How does a friendship that survived public breakups, global stadium tours, and matching VIP suites at the Super Bowl completely disintegrate into an unsealed court battle, a heavily armed fortress lockdown, and a canceled multi-million-dollar fireworks display in the span of just 48 chaotic hours? The way this entire fairy tale facade just imploded is genuinely one of the most calculated, ruthless, and terrifyingly cold-blooded friendship executions the entertainment industry has ever witnessed. We have the receipts, we have the unsealed text messages, and we have the exact moment the match was struck. Before we dive headfirst into this absolute hurricane of celebrity chaos, do me a massive favor, smash that subscribe button for Pretty Loud right now, because you cannot afford to miss a single second of this historical breakdown. Grab your popcorn, because here is exactly how Blake Lively lit Taylor Swift's most sacred secret on fire, and why Hollywood will never, ever be the same again. So to understand how a decade of high-profile loyalty could dissolve into pure, unadulterated radioactive fury, we have to look exactly at where the first crack in the porcelain armor appeared. For years, the public was fed a relentless, beautifully curated narrative of the ultimate Hollywood sisterhood. It was a world of flawless 4th of July parties at the Rhode Island mansion, synchronized dancing in exclusive award show sections, and shared luxury suites where the cameras just happened to capture every single laugh, hug, and perfectly timed reaction. But behind that glittering curtain of red carpets and designer outfits, a much darker, highly transactional dynamic was quietly festering. You see, when you are dealing with the most powerful pop star on the face of the planet, friendship is never just about grabbing a casual coffee or trading clothes. It is about currency. It is about proximity to absolute, unrivaled cultural power. And nobody understood that calculus better than Blake Lively. For nearly 10 years, Blake managed to position herself as the ultimate, untouchable gatekeeper of the inner circle. She was the one who allegedly got to vet the new entries, the one who stood closest to the throne during the massive stadium tours, and the one who boasted in private that her bond with the billionaire superstar was completely ironclad. But as any seasoned Hollywood observer will tell you, the problem with building a relationship entirely on the foundation of public relations dominance is that the moment the power dynamic shifts even a single millimeter, the knives come out. The trouble started bubbling to the surface during the highly publicized, deeply chaotic rollout of the cinematic disaster that was the It Ends With Us promotional tour. While the public was focused on the bizarre, passive-aggressive workplace drama between Blake and her director Justin Baldoni, a much more sinister operation was happening behind the scenes. Blake, facing a sudden and unprecedented wave of intense public backlash for her tone-deaf interview responses and aggressive marketing tactics, did not just look for a standard crisis management firm. Instead, she decided to weaponize her most powerful asset. She decided to pull the ultimate leverage card from her sleeve by dragging the name, the brand, and the terrifyingly loyal fanbase of her best friend right into the line of fire. Behind closed doors in heated meetings inside luxury New York penthouses, Blake was reportedly throwing around her connection to the music industry titan like a literal weapon. According to highly sensitive, newly unsealed court documents from the ongoing legal warfare behind that film, Blake went so far as to send threatening private text messages to her adversaries, explicitly bragging that she had a mythological dragon at her command. She was telling studio executives, producers, and rival actors that if they did not submit to her creative demands, if they did not cut the director out of his own film, she would unleash her billionaire best friend to completely burn their careers to the ground. She even went as far as threatening to have a highly valuable, deeply emotional song pulled from the movie's promotional trailers if she didn't get total control of the final cut. Now you have to realize that for someone like the pop star in question, who has spent her entire 20-year career meticulously constructing a brand based on hyper-control, strategic imagery, and carefully placed Easter eggs. Being used as an emotional baseball bat in a messy Hollywood ego war is the ultimate betrayal. She is a woman who plans her life 3 years in advance. She does not do chaotic, spontaneous public relations disasters. When the unsealed legal documents leaked to the press and the entire world saw the private text messages referring to her as a dangerous, controllable monster used to terrorize film directors, the reaction inside her camp was instantaneous and absolutely volcanic. The pop star did not just get mildly annoyed. She allegedly went into a cold, calculated fury, realizing that the person she had trusted with her deepest secrets for 10 years was actually using her name as currency to win a petty Hollywood studio dispute. The immediate consequence was a silent, sudden, and completely devastating withdrawal. The inner circle was ordered to freeze Blake out, phone calls went entirely unanswered, and the invitations to private gatherings ceased to exist. But Blake, a woman who has spent her entire adult life navigating the highest stakes of the entertainment industry, realized her status as the #1 friend was slipping away forever. She knew that once she was cast out of that golden light, her untouchable reputation would crumble, leaving her completely exposed to the wolves of the industry. And that is exactly when the situation transitioned from a private falling out into a malicious, deeply calculated act of psychological warfare. If she was going to be pushed out of the kingdom, she was going to make sure she burned down the palace on her way out. She knew the one thing that her former best friend valued above all else: the absolute total privacy of her upcoming top-secret summer wedding to the NFL superstar. This wedding was supposed to be the crown jewel of her private life, a hyper-classified event scheduled for June 13th at the historic Ocean House Resort in Rhode Island. It was planned with military-grade secrecy, using shell companies to book vendors, non-disclosure agreements with million-dollar penalties for every single employee, and a completely synchronized security detail designed to keep the paparazzi miles away from the coast. Only a handful of people on Earth knew the exact date, the precise venue, and the highly specific logistics of the multi-million-dollar fireworks show that was supposed to illuminate the Atlantic Ocean to celebrate the vows. It was the most closely guarded secret in modern entertainment history. But Blake Lively had the keys to the kingdom. She knew every single detail because she had been deeply involved in the early planning stages before the legal scandal erupted. Driven by a volatile mix of envy, panic, and a desperate desire to prove that she still held immense power over her former friend's life, an administrative execution was set into motion. In a series of highly strategic, completely untraceable leaks to major tabloid outlets, the entire blueprint of the Rhode Island wedding was abruptly dumped into the public domain. Within hours, the peaceful, secluded coastal resort was completely overrun by international paparazzi, media helicopters, and thousands of fanatical onlookers trying to catch a glimpse of the setups. The illusion of safety was shattered in an instant. The reaction from the pop star's headquarters was a mix of sheer panic and pure, unadulterated rage. A sudden chaotic phone call was made to the local fireworks company out of absolutely nowhere, telling them the entire show was completely canceled, effective immediately. Not postponed, not rescheduled, but completely dismantled. The massive catering trucks were ordered to turn around on the highway, the florists were dismissed, and the entire dream wedding that had taken nearly a year to meticulously organize was vaporized in the span of a single afternoon. The financial loss was astronomical, but the emotional damage was permanent. When the pop star's internal security team began tracing the source of the leak, looking through communication logs and identifying who could have possibly known the exact timing of the fireworks permit, all roads led straight back to the inner circle. It wasn't a loose-lipped hotel maid or a venue worker looking for a quick payday from TMZ. It was a deliberate, targeted strike from someone who had stood at her right hand for a decade. The betrayal was so deep, so profoundly personal, that it completely broke the pop star's sense of security, forcing her to immediately transform her entire life into a literal wartime operation. She retreated instantly to her massive Rhode Island estate, but it was no longer a beautiful beach house for summer parties. It became a hyper-fortified stronghold designed to keep the entire world at bay while she planned her brutal retaliation, which brings us to the shocking investigative findings and the bizarre secret gatherings that took place behind those heavily guarded walls, because what the neighbors saw looking through binoculars would completely change the entire narrative of this war. The transformation of that quiet, historic Rhode Island property was nothing short of terrifying for the local residents who had grown accustomed to the peaceful, sleepy atmosphere of the coastal town. Overnight, the estate was surrounded by a massive fleet of large black SUVs with completely blacked out, heavily tinted windows that rolled in and out of the gated driveway in synchronized military-style formations. Local law enforcement sources confirmed that a private security firm consisting of former Special Forces operatives was hired to establish a virtual perimeter around the entire edge of the property, equipped with advanced drone detection technology and long-range surveillance gear. Neighbors reported seeing armed guards pacing the private beach, shining high-powered spotlights into the dark ocean waters to ensure that no paparazzi or curiosity seekers could approach by boat or jet ski. The house, which usually sits dark and serene when the pop star is not in residence, was suddenly illuminated from top to bottom with floodlights, while a massive, industrial-grade tent structure was erected near the main terrace, completely obstructing the view from any neighboring balconies or high vantage points. It was an event-level lockdown designed to create a total informational vacuum, a physical manifestation of a billionaire star, completely severing her ties with the outside world. But while the exterior of the mansion looked like a high-security government facility, the activities taking place inside those walls were captured in a brief, highly controversial video snippet that sent shockwaves through TikTok and the broader internet. A local resident, filming from a significant distance with a powerful telephoto lens, managed to capture a blurry 10-second clip of 4 distinct figures standing on a high, secluded rooftop balcony of the mansion. The visual was striking, almost eerie. 3 of the women were dressed in identical floor-length black robes, standing in a protective semi-circle around a 4th figure who possessed distinct blonde hair and was wearing a bright, pristine white robe. The imagery looked less like a casual weekend hangout and more like a hyper-exclusive, highly secretive bachelorette ritual. Within minutes of the video going viral, internet sleuths and celebrity analysts began cross-referencing the physical profiles of the individuals, confirming that the guest list for this emergency lockdown gathering was strictly limited to the absolute iron vault of the pop star's remaining inner circle. The Haim sisters, Gigi Hadid, Zoe Kravitz, and her oldest childhood confidant, Abigail Anderson, who was later spotted by local photographers standing on the porch holding a baby, were the only people permitted past the armed security checkpoint. Conspicuously, violently absent from this gathering was Blake Lively, the woman who just months prior would have been leading the festivities, choosing the outfits, and commanding the center of attention was completely locked out, left to rot in the cold reality of her total exile. But the logistics of this drama became even more mind-boggling when investigative journalists tracked the movements of the groom, the NFL superstar, who was precisely 3,000 miles away on the completely opposite side of the country during this exact same 48-hour window. While his bride-to-be was operating a high-security fortress in Rhode Island, he was spotted out in the hyper-exclusive, members-only Bird Streets Club in West Hollywood, California. He wasn't alone. He was surrounded by his brother Jason Kelce, his closest former teammates and high-profile comedians, effectively throwing a massive, high-stakes bachelor celebration in total secrecy on the West Coast. The shocking coordination of these separate coastal events painted a crystal-clear picture for industry insiders. The couple had abandoned all traditional wedding blueprints. The prevailing theory that has completely consumed Hollywood circles is that the couple, realizing their original June 13th public celebration had been utterly compromised by Blake's malicious leak, actually went ahead and got legally married in a completely secret, courthouse ceremony weeks prior with 0 cameras present. The separate coastal parties were not preparations for a future wedding, but rather a strategic, post-facto celebration divided by gender to maintain absolute. But the pop star wasn't just content with hiding away. She needed a massive, public display of dominance to completely crush Blake Lively's narrative and prove that her power could not be contained or disrupted by a single betrayal. She needed a new venue for her grand reception, a place that could accommodate thousands of people, but offer the absolute, impenetrable security of a subterranean military bunker. And that is exactly when reports surfaced that her team had pulled off the ultimate logistical miracle, booking the single most famous sports and entertainment arena in the world, Madison Square Garden in the heart of New York City. The choice of Madison Square Garden for a wedding reception was a move of pure, unadulterated corporate and cultural dominance. It was a multi-million-dollar logistical nightmare that only a billionaire artist could execute on a few weeks' notice. The arena allows for massive tinted transport buses to drive deep into underground, highly secure loading docks completely hidden beneath the streets of Manhattan, ensuring that guests can transition from their luxury hotels to the interior of the venue without ever exposing a single inch of skin to the paparazzi waiting on the sidewalks. There are no neighboring balconies from which drones can film. There are no public vantage points. There is only a massive, completely enclosed concrete and steel fortress in the center of the world's most media-saturated city. Famous celebrity wedding planners leaked details to the press indicating that the guest list for this July 3rd mega production had ballooned to an astonishing 1,200 to 2,400 people, turning what was once a private, romantic coastal vow exchange into a full-scale, arena-sized theatrical production. The interior of the stadium was reportedly transformed by bringing in full-grown trees, thousands of tons of imported soil, and millions of dollars of custom floral arrangements to completely soften the harsh, concrete atmosphere of the arena, effectively creating a surreal, indoor forest landscape. It was designed to be the ultimate show, a display of wealth, influence, and security that effectively sent a message to Blake Lively and the rest of Hollywood. You can leak my secrets, you can burn down my beach plans, but I will simply buy an entire sports arena and throw the biggest production in human history, just to show you that you are entirely insignificant. It was a statement of raw power, a testament to the fact that when you cross a billionaire icon, she doesn't just cut you off, she completely outscales your entire existence. The guest list itself became a masterclass in psychological warfare, intentionally featuring every major Hollywood executive, legendary director, and chart-topping artist who had witnessed Blake's attempt to brandish her connection to the pop star during her recent film dispute. By gathering the entire industry into one room under her exclusive banner, the pop star was systematically demonstrating exactly who held the keys to cultural relevance and who was being left entirely out in the dark. But as the thousands of elite guests, including sports icons, legendary filmmakers, and international pop stars, began filing through the heavy metal detectors of Madison Square Garden, the atmosphere behind the scenes was thick with tension, paranoia, and a looming sense of impending legal and social devastation. The sheer scale of the event could not mask the fact that an aggressive, behind-the-scenes purge had taken place to cleanse the inner circle of any remaining liabilities. Security personnel at the arena checkpoints were reportedly armed with highly specific, laminated guest registries that featured prominent black lines through names that had spent years at the top of the VIP list. Every single invitee was forced to surrender their personal electronic devices at the door, locking them into secure, encrypted pouches to ensure that not a single frame of video, audio recording, or candid photograph could escape into the wild. This wasn't just a party. It was a highly controlled informational lockdown masquerading as a celebration of love, a massive corporate fortress erected in the middle of Manhattan. The irony was palpable. The most public building in New York had been converted into the most private vault on Earth, specifically because the pop star could no longer trust the traditional sanctuaries of wealth and privilege. The luxury beach houses and private islands had failed her, so she took refuge in the teeth of a giant metropolitan stadium. Yet, as the music began to echo through the heavily fortified arena, the focus of the underground media shifted entirely from the people who were drinking champagne inside to the profound, irreversible damage that this war was causing to the innocent bystanders who had been caught in the crossfire, because the fallout from this psychological warfare was about to claim several more high-profile victims who never saw the blade coming. The true tragedy of this entire calculated friendship implosion is that when a nuclear bomb goes off in the world of the Hollywood elite, the collateral damage is always borne by the people who were actually loyal. And there is no greater, more heartbreaking example of this than the total brutal erasure of Miles and Kelly Teller from the pop star's universe. For years, the Tellers were not just casual members of the squad. They were the absolute rock-solid foundation of her emotional support system. They were the ones who starred in her most personal music videos, the ones who spent every major holiday by her side. And Kelly was the person who famously gifted the pop star a stunning, custom opal ring that she wore proudly to major international award shows as a symbol of their unbreakable bond. Yet, when the invitations for the massive Madison Square Garden reception were finalized, the Tellers' names were completely missing from the register, their decade of loyalty entirely deleted, as if they had never existed. The reason for this shocking ice-cold banishment traces straight back to the toxic, manipulative web spun by Blake Lively during her desperate campaign to isolate the pop star and maintain her position as the undisputed #1 friend. Insiders close to the situation have revealed that Blake grew intensely envious of the natural, easygoing closeness between Kelly Teller and the pop star. Seeing Kelly as a direct threat to her influence, Blake allegedly spent months whispering poison into the pop star's ear, exaggerating minor slights, and creating artificial distance between them. The breaking point occurred during a moment of profound, life-altering trauma for the Teller family. In January of 2025, a series of catastrophic, fast-moving wildfires swept through the ultra-luxury Pacific Palisades neighborhood in Los Angeles, completely engulfing the Tellers' recently purchased $7.5 million dream home. They were forced to flee for their absolute lives in the middle of the night, leaving behind all of their earthly possessions, including Kelly's cherished wedding dress, which was completely vaporized as the house burned to the ground, leaving nothing but a hollowed-out shell of gray ash and the melted frame of their vehicle in the driveway. It was a moment of unimaginable grief, shock, and vulnerability. The exact moment when you find out who your real friends are. While the local community and casual acquaintances rushed to offer support, shelter, and comfort, the silence radiating from the pop star's camp was deafening, cold, and absolute. Operating under the intense, manipulative fog created by Blake's constant whispering, and deeply consumed by her own global tour logistics, the pop star did not send a single text message, did not make a single phone call, and did not offer a single one of her multiple empty mansions across the country as a temporary sanctuary for her displaced friends. For Kelly Teller, who had spent years publicly defending and celebrating her friend at every turn, this complete lack of basic human empathy was a devastating, fatal blow to the relationship. The bridge was completely incinerated alongside the house, a reality that became blindingly obvious to the public during the subsequent Super Bowl broadcast. In 2024, the Tellers were front and center in the luxury suite, drinking and celebrating alongside the pop star in a highly publicized display of unity. But by the 25 championship game in New Orleans, the dynamic was completely fractured. The Tellers utterly boycotted the luxury suite, choosing instead to sit deep in the public stadium seats with the regular fans. When sports journalists asked Miles Teller why he wasn't celebrating with the groom's inner circle, he offered a deeply tense, highly pointed excuse about his die-hard loyalty to the Philadelphia Eagles, stating bluntly that he could never bring himself to root for the Chiefs, even as a favor to a friend. It was a transparent, incredibly weak cover-up that everyone in Hollywood saw right through, considering that the groom's own brother, a legendary Eagles icon, was sitting right in that suite cheering for his family. The Tellers were making a stand. Meanwhile, the panic inside Blake Lively's camp has reached an absolute fever pitch as the social and professional consequences of her banishment begin to set in. High-level PR insiders report that Blake is in a state of total existential terror, realizing that being publicly branded as the malicious leaker who ruined the pop star's wedding is a career death sentence from which no amount of glossy magazine covers can save her. In a series of increasingly desperate, deeply embarrassing maneuvers, Blake's team has been flooding entertainment outlets with conflicting, completely fabricated reports claiming that an olive branch has been extended, and that she has already selected a custom designer gown for the Madison Square Garden event in a desperate bid to force her way through the door. But those who understand the cold, administrative reality of the pop star's operation know that there are no second chances when you compromise her security. If Blake Lively is somehow spotted near the venue, it will not be a reunion of genuine friends. It will be a carefully negotiated, highly transactional piece of public relations theater, designed solely to prevent a total stock market collapse of her personal brand. The empty seats at Madison Square Garden will tell a story far louder than the music, a stark, terrifying monument to the true cost of operating at the absolute pinnacle